the moment, HMOs and everything else in between. I own a construction company, lettings agency, and a training organisation as well.
So not much. Not much. All right, great. I'm going to start off then with the questions that we have here, and then we'll open it up to the audience in a little bit. Okay, so firstly then, Angels, please can you tell me about your most profitable project to date, and what factors contributed to that success? And what I'm going to do is swap the mic, because I think this is a lot louder than this one.
Shall I go first? Okay, so without doubt my most profitable deal was the first loan that we ever wrote. I remortgaged my own home to do that first loan. That was December 2010. Fast forward 14 years, and I think that over the past 6 weeks or so, our business has just gone north of 200 million. So I think without doubt the first deal that we ever did was the best deal, and it remains, it's still the best deal.
I think that deserves a round of applause.
Can't quite top 200 million, but I'll give it a go. I think the most profitable deal that I'm doing is at the moment. So I've negotiated a really great deal on a museum. I specialise in listed buildings. The building had a covenant on there to state it could only be used as a museum. I negotiated it down to about £15 per square foot. I got the covenant removed. I got planning permission for it to be an entertainment quarter where we will have cricket sixes, inflationation, indoor food court, escape rooms and things like that. And I purchased it at just over £200,000. Yeah, very cheap. Down to relationships. I've been working with this.
Want to borrow any money, just let me know.
I don't need your money. Not yet. But when I get to the 200 million, maybe I'll come knock on your door. No, actually, Roma are fantastic, and I've got a lot of time for them. The deal itself will be valued at just under 3 million, and it will have a rental revenue of £300,000.
Very good.
How can I follow that? Goodness me, how difficult. So, I always hate this question because you either sound like a show-off or you don't sound very good, one or the other. So, I always hope my next deal will be my best deal. And whatever deal you've done in the past, they're in the past. So, you've got to make sure that the next deal is your best deal, one way or the other, or try to. I've just purchased a tower block for £1. Now, you might think, well, that's okay, you can't fail to make money on that. You can fail to make money on that because it is about 15 million spent on it, but that's another story. I would say one of the best deals I've done are one of my smallest deals. And one of my smallest deals was to buy a bungalow with a tenant in it for £55,000. Within a few months, I got the tenant to move out, and I sold it for £165,000. So some of the smallest deals, I promise you, are the most profitable. You don't need to be, smashing out the ballpark, buying something for millions of pounds, which I've done. Some of those, when you look at the time and effort you put into them, and the amount of money you make compared to what you put into them, they're not the best. Some of the best deals are the deals that some of you are doing, probably now, which are maybe smaller deals, but they can be very profitable. So I would say that enjoy what you're doing and make sure that you cover every angle when you look at a deal and keep searching for those deals. And the way to search for them is by contacts. All of you here in this room can meet each other. That's why, networking, property's all about contacts. It's not about data. Hayley will tell you it's about data. She drives me nuts. It's not, I promise you. Data's useful, but it's all about who you know, I promise you. And you now know lots of people.
Data doesn't lie. We just got John saying that size doesn't really matter.
I just make one other point, okay? And John talks about doing due diligence on deals, okay? And you're finding things out, lifting the bonnet and seeing what's there. Some of the best deals that you'll ever do are the ones that you don't do. Okay? So never be afraid to walk away from something that doesn't stack, and never get too emotionally attached to a deal, because having the ability and the courage to walk away from something that just doesn't feel right, absolutely can be the best decision you'll ever make.
Yeah, that's some fantastic advice there. Okay then, how about your favourite project? What's been your favourite one so far, and why did it stand out, either on a personal level or professionally?
I suppose it's got to be the 150 flats I did on Ipswich Waterfront, because I looked at this building for 10 years after the 2008-9 recession. I looked at it for 10 years, or 8 years, thinking the time's not right, and it sat there, and eventually I purchased it. I'm based in Ipswich, and as one or two friends of mine said, you don't want to get this one wrong, John, because you can see it from everywhere in Ipswich. It's 15, 18 stories high. It can be very embarrassing if you get it wrong, which is true. And remember, not every deal works. You're not going to smash it out the park every time. It's just not possible. And anyone who tells you that you're going to make money out of every deal, it's going to be fantastic, you're never going to lose any money, it's just not true. You've got to be realistic. If you can be successful 7 out of 10 times and not lose any money on the other 3 times, that's a very good ratio. Very, very good ratio. So I'm very proud of the wine rack. We spent £26 million, funded by Homes England. So all of you, Homes England is the government bank. So all of you have helped me do that. So thank you very much. You've had your money back now, so we won't say any more about it. And I think because it was a problem for many, many years in Ipswich, and now it's standing looking tall, that would be my proudest moment in property so far. But I'm still going, you never know.
Is it proudest?
Your favourite project?
I think the museum that I'm working on at the moment, there was loads of challenges with it, but this building I drove past. I used to take my son there. I used to go there as a child myself, right up until the week it closed as a museum. Over 10 years ago, I took my son there, and this is a building that I've always wanted to own in my portfolio. It's not a hard decision. I'm very much commercially minded and don't let my heart rule my head. But this is a building, I love history, so I sit on several listed heritage trusts and boards. I sit on the Towns Fund, regeneration and all things like that. So this is a building that I've wanted to restore for a very long time. And Law of Attraction brought that to me, I'm not sure, but definitely relationships over the last 15 years in the area helped. But bringing this back into public use is definitely a passion and will be my favourite project.
Amazing, thank you, Hayley.
I think it's wonderful to see John here saying near retirement age as well. I'm still doing deals. I think that's just make that comment to start off with. I think my favourite deal, and maybe this is one that I'm most proud of as well, because we've been going for about 4 years. We were a real cottage industry back in, or cottage business I should say, back in 2014. And we got approached by a lady who was a former Olympic show jumper, and she was also a former finance director at Boots. And she wanted to build her dream house and a equestrian centre and groomsmen's residence and so on and so forth. Anyway, we lent her the money to buy the property. The purchase price was 325 grand, we lent her 200,000, and then she was going to get a self-built mortgage from one of the building societies. Okay, all sounds great, so far. I think that she was on about £200,000 a year, so she was obviously, incredibly successful. Cutting a long story short, the building society at the last minute pulled out of the deal to do the self-built mortgage, and then we were then stuck. Okay, so this is obviously early days of our business. We were just doing bridging, no developments, and so we sat down as a business and we decided what do we do to try to help this customer. And we decided, feel free to take it, John, if you're busy.
Probably not a deal, but yeah.
Might be your pension coming through.
Not yet.
Anyway, so we were like, what do we do? So and this lady was fantastic. And it was on the back of that decision by one of the building societies to withdraw their development finance, self-build mortgage, where we launched, or did our very first development finance project. Okay, so we appointed a QS, quantity surveyor to act for us. She had a builder, and she had a QS that was acting for her. Halfway through the project, our QS found out that her QS was on the take with the builder, ripping her off. Okay, so second problem. And we sat down and we devised a strategy where we would work with the builder and the QS to the point where the property was then wind and watertight. And at the point where it was wind and watertight, then she would then go and sack the builder and the QS, appoint a new builder, and our QS would then act for both parties, which we did. And cutting a long story short, the project was a success. She moved in, she got the Groupman's residence, she got the equestrian centre, and she's been a long-standing friend of the business and a real stakeholder in getting our business to where it is today on the back of that one deal. So again, one of the other things I'd say is that you learn more from the deals that go wrong than the deals that go right. And so John's point around, not every deal will make money, but I'll tell you what, the ones that don't make money, your learning curve will be far steeper and you'll come out of it far better.
Brilliant. So let's move on to some challenges then. What's been your biggest failure, I guess, in business so far, and how have you managed to overcome that?
Recently I've lost £100,000 on a non-refundable holding payment I put down and then couldn't actually exercise it in time. That hurt a little. I know, £100,000 isn't a massive amount of money, but for it to be, but also spent almost £100,000 doing the due diligence, getting the valuations, surveys and things like that. So I'm about 200 grand in and the deal's not secured to me anymore. I still might be able to do this deal, but it really comes down to the seller and also nobody else sniffing around while I sort the finance out issue. Actually, you could probably help with that one. That's a £5.4 million deal.
Okay.
So £100,000, due diligence is not a massive amount of money in the grand scheme, and the £100,000 retainer, which is non-refundable, was to secure the deal for me for a certain period of time while I did my due diligence.
Would you do that retainer again?
Yeah, I would. You've got to be prepared. You understand the risk of the deal before you move in. You understand the commitment that you put both in time and money, and ultimately we win some, we lose some, and hopefully I still win this. If not, I'm 200 grand lighter.
Hopefully, Hayley. If there's anyone that can, it will be you for sure.
Very tenacious is our Hayley, very tenacious. Now, what was the question?
Is your memory going a bit?
No, I'm all right.
What has been your biggest failure to date, and how did you overcome it in business?
Well, I started off with an idea for a show called Property Elevator. And started off all right to start with, and then no. The two best people I worked with on the show are here, obviously. Ranjan, who I always say is the gift that keeps on giving to me. He's so funny. And a lot of people ask me, do we like each other? Well, we do a YouTube thing together, so we sort of like each other, but there is that little bit of friction from time to time. Anyway, that wasn't the question, was it? The question was, well, I think every time I have a challenge with a contractor. So the two or three things that three things you can get wrong when you're doing a property is it can take longer than you think, and it normally does. It can cost you more than you think, and it normally does. And you can get less for it. Now, I'm very good on the third one, which is handy because I borrow a lot of money off Roma. So the fact that I'm good on the sale prices and the actual amount I get, I'm normally spot on in that. Where I get it wrong, and where everyone else gets it wrong, nearly everyone, not everyone as well, is on build costs. Build costs the last 3 years have been a real challenge for everybody. It's very hard to, and we do a lot of property when we buy off receivers, people, so property's part finished, so we have a big contingency in there. But even so, it's still very difficult to get the prices right, or the costs right all the time. And the other thing is time. And if you're borrowing off Roma or anybody else, always add another 3 months or 6 months to the amount you're borrowing if you can. So if you think you'll do it a year, borrow it over 18 months because you might end up, it might take you 14 months to sell it, 15 months, and they'll give you some money back then. So you're not wasting the money. But it's very important that you don't end up having to refinance the deal 18 months later, a year later. So it's very important. So on every site is a challenge on those 3 things. And if you can get 2 of the 3 things right, you're doing pretty well. So nothing is perfect.
So I'd just like to say one point, which is that there's actually 3 of John's favourite people here.
Yes.
We've got to include Lizzie as well, right?
Yeah.
Lizzie's lovely. She's not like you two.
Okay, so I think that answering the question, some of the biggest mistakes that I've made are some of the people that I've brought into the business over the years. So we have, we've got a really, really fantastic team now. But on that journey, I've made some mistakes and hired the wrong people. And I think that whatever line of work that you're in, whatever business you're in, whether you are putting a power team around you for a development project, whether you are employing people, whether you're choosing tenants for properties, if you get the wrong person or the wrong people in your business, then the impact that those people can have can be incredibly damaging and can be toxic. And it's a bit like if a body gets God forbid cancer, then the best thing you can do is to cut that cancer out and get rid of it as quickly as possible. And we've had the wrong people in our business over the years. They do damage, but when you've got to cut quickly, get rid, and you can move on as a business. And I can cite half a dozen examples of where you think you're doing the right thing, you think you're working with the right people, it doesn't work out. But for the sake of that person that you have brought in that's a mistake, also getting rid of them quickly actually allows them to move on with their life, allows you to move on with your business. And so I think looking back over the sort of 15 years or so that we've been going, those are the biggest mistakes that we've made.
Higher than slow, flying fast is what I say.
Yeah, 100%. Well, interesting. One of the biggest ones biggest mistakes we made was somebody who I hired really slowly because I was concerned about their the way they spoke with people or what they did and how they behaved. I thought we kind of got past that. The first few months of our honeymoon period, and then this person reverted back to type. And so.
I think people always show their self eventually, don't they?
Yeah, they do. Yeah. 100%.
And I think one of the biggest
Some quicker than others.
So yeah, exactly. One of the, and with any business, it doesn't really matter what it is. Managing people and hiring the right people is the hardest part. And even to this day, 22 years in, I'm still constantly learning new things about that every single day. And the challenges with staff these days is quite hard.
Yeah.
What's been your
That's the part I cry about most often. Staff.
Would you say that's then your biggest challenge still to date?
I think most businesses have that challenge because connecting the right people, they may have all of the right credentials but actually don't get on very well with the team. So it's kind of trial and error, and you never really know until you test drive that person, really. I mean that in the greatest respect.
I'll say one other thing. The other thing I'll say is that you cannot build or grow a business without people. And so don't be afraid to make a decision to go and recruit. 9 times out of 10, it will work out. You will trust your gut. You will make the right decision. But the 1 time out of 10 that it doesn't work out. It hurts personally because you feel that you've personally failed. The people that are in the business that get affected by the toxicity, they are concerned. But again, cut it out. Cut them out and do it quickly is the biggest advice that I can give to people. The other thing is take on for a probation period. Don't be afraid to extend the probation period if you're not sure towards the end of it, whether it's right or wrong.
That's great advice. Do we have anybody in the room that is a new developer, or do we have people here that are already a few deals in, fairly early on in their career? No? Okay, because the next question was going to be, if somebody was just starting out now, what advice would you give? Maybe we can still just share something quickly.
So I'll go first on this one. So John's already alluded to a couple of bits, which is first of all, overestimate the time it's going to take you to do the project, overestimate the cost that you're going to incur. The worst thing that can happen, therefore, is that you make a bit more money than you're expecting to make. The other piece I would say is you need to build in a contingency if something goes wrong. So we see that on a project, it might be that we've got a QS acting for us or a monitoring surveyor, and something gets done wrong by a builder, a joiner, a plumber, a plasterer, whatever. Okay, so work has to be redone. Okay, someone's got to pay for that, and if the QS won't sign off to say that work is of decent quality, it's got to be redone, and that's going to come out of your pocket as a developer. So build in kind of working capital contingency so that you can cover some element of a problem should it occur during a project. And so I think that having a bit of wool on your back, not over leveraging yourself, and having some cash in the background means that you can kind of trade through a difficult situation, should one arise during the scheme. The very last thing that you want is a lender, you've got no money, and the lender says, I'm sorry, we can't fund that because of these reasons, and then you're used. You want to avoid that situation.
Okay. All of what Scott said, but I'd probably add, start with the end in mind, understand what you're looking to achieve from the deal or the development or the investment. Don't measure yourself by other people. Stay in your own lane, focus on what you're doing. Make sure that you are doing your due diligence. Data doesn't lie. John just doesn't like doing it. And yeah, add, put contingencies in there, lots of buffers, give yourself extra time. And yeah, just put a stake in the ground, get on with it, and focus on yourself, your deal, and not all of the Instagram-worthy deals that are supposedly happening around you. So you definitely don't measure your success by other people.
I'm not going to ask what the question was, but as I was listening to Scott intensely, so what I would say is when people come on the property elevator, they make a few mistakes. Not everybody, but some. First of all, likability is very important. Likability is so important. The second thing is, do not over-exaggerate what the profit's going to be. Under-promise and over-deliver. And that doesn't matter whether you've got an investor that you're trying to impress, or whether you're trying to impress a group of angel investors, or whoever. Under-promise and over-deliver. And that is on the sale prices, and also the build costs, and ideally the time as well. They're the three things. So I have three golden rules. They are, I should be able to, if I'm buying a deal, I should be able to sell it straight away without spending any money on it to someone else, if I paid the right money for it. Someone else should pay more than I've paid for it. I should be able to refurbish it, sell it and make a good profit. I should be able to refurbish it, let it, and refinance it. Not 100% anymore, because that's unrealistic, but certainly I should get most of my cash out to go again. That's what I should be able to do. And I ask myself that every day, when any deal I look at, can I do all three things? If I can only do two of those three things, and I think, should I be doing it? I should be able to do all three. High standards. It's not the amount of deals you do, it's the quality of those deals. You can do one good deal a year and make a load of money, you can do 10 deals and lose money. Very important.
Thank you, John. Shall we open it up to the audience for a few minutes?
Yeah, let's do that.
Does anybody have a question for the angels? Yes.
Thank you. First of all, I wanted to congratulate all of you on your success. It's good to see and good to aspire to. My name is Freddie Eshelwood, co-founder of Easy Invest. I just wanted a sentence of advice you would give your younger self in your entrepreneurial career.
Nice question.
Good question. Great one for Scott to start while I think about it.
Hopefully you won't forget the question.
I'm a forever moving forward person. I don't regret anything I do, but one of the biggest mistakes I made, and one of the things I would do differently if I was to do it again, was value my time. I was a jack of all trades. I sourced the deal, I negotiated the deal, I did the schedule of works, I went out to tender, I went to project managed, I found the materials, I picked the materials up, I filled skips, I stripped walls, and then I managed the tenants off the back end after finding them as well. So I have a great deal of respect for all of my team. But I never recognised that there was an opportunity cost. My strengths really are in negotiating the deals, building relationships, maintaining those relationships, and that's where my time should have been spent. So there's probably a lot of deals I haven't done as a result of spreading my time too thin and not actually looking at that return on time as well as money.
I think mine would be is that I love trading property. I love buying, selling, same day, week later, month later if I can. And someone said to me the other day, John, you're a better trader than you are a property developer. Not sure I like to hear that, but it's probably true. And I would say, when I look back at some of the properties I've sold too quickly, like within a month, 2 months, thought I was very clever making a few pounds. When I look back at some of them now, I drive past them and I cringe to think that, what was I doing? Why the hell didn't I bloody keep it? So I would, although I've got a decent sized portfolio and the rest of it, I think in retrospect, I've always been too keen to sell things on and should have been a little bit more patient at times.
I think that from my perspective, I wish that I'd started my business earlier. So I think that when I was younger, I didn't have a lot of confidence. I was scared of failure, and I think that one of the phrases that I often think about now is JFDI. If everyone knows what JFDI stands for.
Clue, what the hell's that?
He's got young girls, so he's cool.
So JFDI is just effing do it. Okay, so if you've got the seed or the germ of an idea and you think it's a flyer, have the confidence. Don't feel the imposter syndrome that you're not worthy, you're not capable. Because I think if I'd have started earlier, then we could have been an even more successful business than we are today. So no, absolutely have the confidence to do what you believe in and go for it.
Yeah, that's great advice. And I'd just like to add on to that. As you can hear from our angels, they're all very different, and all of their skill sets you can see are very different as well.
Do you not think that Hayley and John are very similar?
No, not at all. But what I would say is figure out what your skill set is and then run with that. Yeah, we're all so different. Bring your team together, but go with your skills and what you're great at. Okay, next question.
If you're getting paid.
Thank you very much for your time. My question is, over the past several years of being in the property industry, what's one problem you wish you could solve when looking for a property? Either a problem which you had over the past years, it's been solved or not solved properly, but which was a resolution for it.
Just repeat the question.
What one problem do you think we could solve? You've been in the industry a long time.
Yes.
What's the one problem which has been a consistent problem that you wish we could solve?
I think every problem is solvable. I take this approach with my investments. I look for deals that most people will walk away from. I look for problem properties. I look for enforcements, covenants, all things like that, listed buildings and everything else in between. There is no problem that's not solvable. And there's no problem that I haven't been able to solve either. You might not like the outcome, and the outcome has to change, but there's always a way around the problem. So focus on the solution rather than the problem, I would say.
You got an answer then, is that it?
Wait, nobody told me my flight's been open. tired.
We've not noticed.
You're the only one that noticed.
I know.
I'm not saying a word because I'll get into trouble. So what I would, we'll move on. So I would say the planning system in the UK is an absolute joke. The Conservative government helped it somewhat with PD, permissive development, but on the whole, it's been incredibly challenging for everyone, all of you who are involved, having to get planning and everything else. I don't see it changing much under Labour government. They're going to try and do a few different things. But let me give you one reason why I don't think it will get a lot better, and that's this. The local elections are in April. A lot of the Labour councils will turn to other parties. The control at the moment is under Labour. The control will change at the local elections on some of them to Liberals, to Green, to Nigel's Reform, Conservatives, because it's the typical situation where the government's in power. Now, the government need those councils. They need their goodwill to get all these new planning reforms through. And it just won't happen. So unfortunately, although they're trying, I don't think they'll be successful. And I think the planning system that we have, which is crazy, out of date, and all the rest of it, will remain a problem. Sadly. That's how long you've got.
That's right, you know, if you've got enough time.
I was going to say something very similar to John insofar as actually working in the property sector, a period of stability where you can predict what is going to happen in 12 months' time, even 6 months' time, 12 months' time, 18, 24 months' time, would be massively helpful. If you think back over the past 10 years or so, we have been the victims of a number of sort of black swan events where we've not been able to control things. And in addition to that, there's been all sorts of legislation by even the previous government to make things harder for landlords, developers, etc., etc. And the way that things are going with the new government coming in, they're talking a good game, but actually, if they don't get it right, things can go the other way quite quickly. And so just a period of stability for the property industry. So it's got a fantastic a base on which it can grow, and people can be successful and create the solutions for what's really needed in society. Would be massively helpful.
Yeah. Yes.
Thank you very much. This is probably more of a specific question to a problem that I currently have. So whenever I've done deals in the past, I've taken money generally on a first charge, I put the money in for refurb, refinanced it, and even it's been left and it's been mine. I'm looking at a project at the moment. It's the first time I'm buying a property with a mortgage, so buying at 70% loan to value. We're putting a deposit down. I need a relatively substantial sum for the refurb. It's sort of 210 grand. Hayley, I know that's not a lot of money to you, so if you fancy lending it,
It is a lot of money to me. I was hurting.
What I want to avoid, ideally, is going down the route of sort of bridging-esque finance.
Whoa, Scott won't like that.
Sorry, Scott. It's just typically seemed very expensive compared to where I've taken all the money. So I'm taking unsecured money, but that's kind of allocated elsewhere. Is there an opportunity for sort of second charges or anything else for me to be able to raise the money for the build cost, or how would you potentially look at doing that? The development is relatively de-risked, so purchase price is incredibly cheap. It works without any planning gain after we've done a light refurb, and we then have the opportunity to go into the roof space like next door have done and increase the GDV again. Would you have any advice from that limited deal information about where I can raise?
There's actually some more questions if that's okay. So purchase prices.
390.
So purchase price is 390. Put a 400, which is easier round number. Okay. What's the actual refurb cost that you've got the planning for?
So 210.
So £210,000. So put 200.
Yeah.
Okay. Stands you in.
What are you actually?
Good question. What are you doing?
So that's essentially an initial refurb of. We're buying essentially 6 studios in Birmingham and a 2-bedroom garden house in the rear.
Okay.
So the 6 studios is essentially to do a refurb to those and to the garden house as well.
Yeah.
The garden house alone is probably worth about 350,000 as it stands.
Yeah.
Then we have the opportunity because of next door to go into the roof space and put 2 more apartments.
But that's future. Ignore that for a moment because you've not got that on the table.
The 210 is to prepare for that in the roof space.
Fine. So purchase price at 400, refurb cost 200, stands you in at 600 altogether.
Yeah.
Okay. And what's the GDV of what is known? What's the GDV of what you can do at the moment?
820.
820. Okay. So let me give the answer from a bridging and development perspective, if I can. Okay. And there tend to be two major covenants that a lender will wrap around a customer. Okay. So the first covenant is a loan to GDV. Okay, and different lenders have different appetites, but typically, so let me, before I go to loan to GDV, let me just do the first one first. So loan to cost is the first one. Okay, so if the project stands you in for 600,000, then a lender will give you typically about 75-ish% of the 600,000. Okay, so 450. Okay, with your cash going in first typically. You know, it might be a bit more, might be less, but say 450. So you buy that for 400, your 150 goes in first, and you've got 250 grand from a lender. Going back to John's point, at that point, you can do any number of things with that property, because there's obviously upside in it. Okay, and then the lender will typically then want to give you 100% of the dev costs. Okay, and at 850 the GDV, the second covenant that a lender will wrap around you is the loan to cost, the loan amount of 450, plus all the interest that gets added onto it. Okay, should be no more than about 65%, sometimes 70% of the GDV. Okay, so if you take it's 800 on 850, which is easier in my head, that means that a 450 plus all the interest plus all the costs should come to no more than £560,000. So the deal works. The way that should be structured is that you buy the property, do some work, and you take the drawdowns in arrears of works having been done. So your deal works, even without the one next door, your deal works. Okay, but it's definitely, if you take an equity partner on board rather than debt, an equity partner will want a much greater return than the cost of the debt. And the second thing I'd say around debt is that you'd only pay interest on the money that you actually draw. Okay, so if you take £100,000 at say 12% for argument's sake, okay, but you draw it linearly over the 12 months, you're only paying 6%. Okay, over that £100,000. Okay, and so you've got to look at borrowing money as a deal cost like bricks or cement or labour or something similar. Okay, so that's my bit said. Happy to talk to you about the deal because obviously it stacks, it works. I'll now pass on to Hayley or to John to give a different answer, I'm sure.
Yeah, I do think I can really add anything to that. I'm interested to see what John can.
I can add a lot to that. First of all, who would have thought that Roma would lend would lend money at 6%? That's fantastic. So, thank you, Scott. 5.8 million I've got out with you, something ridiculous at the moment. It was a bit more than that, and now it's only 6%. I'm delighted. Thank you very much. It's been worth coming up all the way up to Manchester just to hear that. Now, sometimes you've got to look at a deal in a different way. Not always, but it's worth looking at it in a different way to make it your deal fit. Okay? So you've got a house, a studio, am I right in saying you've got a studio of 6 flats?
6 studios.
6 studios.
And 1 garden flat.
And 1
garden house.
I thought you were going to say a separate building. Because what I was going to say, you've got a separate building, why don't you flog the building off, reduce costs, refinance, refurbish, refinance. A lot of what Scott said is absolutely right, of course, because if you have a partner, that's probably costing you 50%.
Yeah.
Scott is at 6%. So you can see how attractive that would be. So I never worry about borrowing money. Never worry about it. And the reason I don't worry about it is because it's cheaper than having a partner. It's cheaper than having an angel investor, potentially a joint venture partner or anything else. So as long as I'm not borrowing too much money, and that's important, and I notice and then the other thing that when you're borrowing money, the worry and the risk factor is different for everyone. We're all different here. Some people might wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning worrying about borrowing money. Some people won't worry about it. You do need to see fear. And the properties I look at the moment, which are the receivers where people have had a nightmare, gone bankrupt. Most of them don't see fear. They can't see it. They think that the sun shines every day, nothing's ever going to go wrong, and so on. And the other thing is, if there's 10 houses, they're all in the same condition, part built. They have not got anything finished. So if you're doing, nothing wrong with phasing things, because phasing can save you some interest. It takes longer, but it can save interest. So you do have to look at it and go, well, can I just do, right, you're going to phase the attic, you're not going to do the attic room to start with, maybe. Maybe you need to do that, because it'll be quicker to get it done now than later, but they're all options you've got. And if you've got options in a deal, it's normally a good deal. If there's no options, you've got one option, that's it, then that's difficult. I think that's difficult. But I would always look to borrow money rather of a bank than I would of an investor, personally, depending on the interest rate.
Great advice there. Nice live deal analysis too. Last question, just at the back here.
So my question to the panel would be, what are your pain points in the property finance side?
Sorry, say again?
Biggest pain point in the property finance side?
Biggest pain point?
In the property finance side.
Ringing Scott and asking him.
Too many questions.
So I would say that in the property cycle, John's already alluded to one with the planners. They're an absolute nightmare. Okay, sorry. So the first one is the planners. The planners are an absolute nightmare to work with, and they're so bad. We actually tell our customers that if they're doing an acquisition of a site that requires planning, and they want to buy it pre-planning, they should do it with cash, because there is absolutely no one has any ability to predict how long the planning process will take. Oh, it'll be 6 weeks, 8 weeks. No, it won't. It's highly unlikely to be 6 or 8 weeks. It's a nightmare at the moment. So honestly, as much as we like lending money, we say to people, if you're buying land, buy something that needs to get planning consent, and you can't start work without that planning consent, and there's no way in which you can sort of de-risk yourself without that planning consent, do it for cash.
And if they can't do it for cash, what?
Well, then, I think you need to be realistic as to what it is they're looking for planning for, okay, and then the chances of that being done quickly. So land, for example, you would not buy land without planning consent on a where you're borrowing money, unless someone's doing it for a fixed. It's going to you borrow 100,000, it's going to cost you 10 grand, and it doesn't matter how long it takes. Okay, that's the first thing. The second thing is that there's always two bottlenecks in a process. The first one is valuers. Okay, and the second one is lawyers. Okay, and the most important thing on the legal side is dealing with lawyers that know what they're doing. Just because somebody is a lawyer, been your family lawyer for a long time, doesn't mean they have the skill set to go and do the deal that you need them to do. And we see so many cases where the lawyers just are not up to the job. They don't understand it. It's not their comfort zone. They're an employment lawyer, they're a family lawyer, they're not a property lawyer, they're not a commercial property lawyer, they're just a residential conveyancer only. And they're out of their depth, but they'll never tell you they're out of their depth. Okay, so that's number one. And don't be afraid of paying for good advice. Don't think that you have to have it cheap on the legal fees. You know, sometimes you get what you pay for. In terms of valuers, valuers are also difficult at the moment, particularly because of in a rising interest rate environment, there's uncertainty as about where property prices are going to be, and so they often try to protect their PI and undervalue things. Sometimes that can work in your favour, you can renegotiate purchase prices, sometimes it can work against you because it can actually cause a perfectly good deal to fall apart. Okay, so again, give the valuer, do as much work as you can for the valuer, give them a pack with all of your data, all of your research, before they go and value the property. Make their life easy. So those, I suppose, are the 3 pieces of advice that I can give you.
I actually missed the question.
The biggest pain points you find as a developer or investor in the property finance side?
In finance side. I think finance is always available for the right deal, but it never gets any easier. So you would think, 10 years in, portfolio, it would get easier and easier. It actually doesn't. And actually, the last maybe 5 or 10 years, the questions that get asked now, in comparison to what they did 10 years ago, is a lot more detailed.
Choose the wrong lender.
Well, I don't know. I don't think
Don't
I
raise
am.
the base.
I don't think I am. But even when you're working with the same lender and you've done multiple deals with them, the questions that you have to answer are still the same. That process never gets any easier. It's a hell of a lot of paperwork. It's the bane of my life, and it's the side I don't enjoy. But I think that's probably the biggest thing.
Do you think tech can help solve that problem?
I think tech can help solve every problem. How? I don't know. But if you've got any ideas on that.
Yeah, well, there's a interesting point. There is an organisation which has been formed very recently that a number of lenders and banks have signed up to, which is the Open Property Data Association. If you remember the HIPs that came along years ago and never really took off, okay? The Open Property Data Association, what they're planning on doing is making data available to every purchaser on every property in advance of what is being instructed. Okay, and it's a really exciting project that us and a number of other lenders are trying to be part of, because it can make the whole purchasing process far easier, far quicker, with transparency of information around the properties.
John's shaking his head. Why are you shaking your head at that?
It's a bit like Rightmove and all these other things. Everyone knows everything now. If everything's open and everybody can get access to it, where's the angle? Where's the angle? We're looking for angle. We're looking to buy at one price, sell at another, add value. If there's a problem, we want to know about the problem. We don't want anyone else to know about it to start with. Then we can reduce the price and whatever we might do before we exchange. So we need angles, and everyone knows everything about everything, and every bank knows everything about everything. I'm not sure that's good news for us, but maybe I'm wrong. I thought Scott made some very good points. I thought Hayley's made some very good points. What I would say, and it's slightly different to the question, but it reminds me, just because you've got planning permission on a site does not mean you can build it or convert it, because there's things called preconditions. And the preconditions can kill you on a site. It can take over a year to get the preconditions sorted out in the local authority, having got planning. So during that time, you can have interest on it and everything else and not be able to do a thing. So all the preconditions are all sorted. So if I'm buying a site with planning permission, I won't buy it unless every precondition is already sorted. Because I know how painful and how long it can take to do. Now, if there's only a few preconditions, and you can live with them, you know what they are, and you can sort them out, that's fine. But I've had sites recently where there have been 25, 30 preconditions. Some of the things on the preconditions, I don't even understand what they mean. Luckily, we've got consultants who do. So be very, very careful. Even though it's got planning permission, it's still a struggle to get on site, and that will take you time. So please be careful.
I actually do buy property and sites without planning permission. It's a risk, of course, but you are adding value and...
But mainly existing properties, rather
than normally a plot of land with a building on there.
Yeah, that's different.
That's different.
But you're still getting planning permission, you're still forcing appreciation, and actually the deal is much better.
Scott will end on that.
Scott will end on that. You've got value there, so we can do it.
I think to kind of say don't buy anything that doesn't have planning permission in
do something with in its current state.
Okay. I've just done a car park. Everybody looked at it as a residential development, and I did a feasibility, found out that parking was an issue, put a paying display in there, put an operator in there, and it makes me £6 a month, and it was free land. It's not always about the development, it's about the business opportunity, and it's about understanding what's missing from that particular area. So we look at everything as a business. We're not property investors and developers, we're entrepreneurs. If you can make money, why wouldn't you?
I think that's all fair comment. I think what I'd add to what John was saying, in terms of the availability and transparency of data. Actually, we already know that when you apply for planning consent on a site or a property and it gets rejected, you see all the reasons why something is rejected. And that actually gives you the angles that you can work on that other people can't see. Because if you can solve the issues with a rejected planning consent, that's how you go and have the value. So actually I'd argue that the openness and transparency of the information helps you to create the angles that other people can't see.
Thank you very much, team. That was a fantastic panel today. If you haven't already seen Property Elevator, please do catch us on YouTube. We've just aired series 6, haven't we? 7? Is it 7? Wow. And we're going to have applications open then for season 8 towards the end of this year, early next year. So keep an eye on our social channels for that as well. Make sure you're following the team on Instagram, LinkedIn, all the usuals. And if you have any other questions, make sure you pop them a message, pop them an email, see if you can catch them later on today. And thank you very much to the Property Developer Show for having us today. If you could just give us a round of applause to Mr. Scott Marshall.